Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today is going to be a DIY furniture flip. I am so excited about this project because I've had this piece of furniture in my carport for months. My husband actually found it on the side of the road. It was actually a full hutch, but the top of the hutch was not really what I was looking for, so I asked him just to grab the base, and he did, and it is so beautiful. It's great quality, but it does need some love. It has some major imperfections that we're going to fix today. We're going to add a top, we're going to add some trim, add some legs, and we're going to paint it using Beyond Paint, which is today's sponsor, and I am so thankful to be working with Beyond Paint again. I highly recommend their paint. It's so durable, easy to use, and I swear you get the most professional finish every time. So we're gonna jump right into this project. I also got a couple other things that I'm really excited to share with you guys. I invested in some things to make my job easier, which took me a lot to do because I am someone who's I don't like to buy things like, I don't know. I don't know why I make my job so much harder. I've actually needed these things for a long time, and I finally invested, so I'll share those with you guys in just a second. I actually just picked them up today. I got a hydraulic lift, and I got a little stool to roll around on, so that way I'm not like constantly crouching down. I think this will make projects so much nicer, and actually a lot more enjoyable as well, because sometimes like I don't really want to do a project because it's killer on your body. Like, it really is a lot of work. It's a lot of time that goes into it, and if you get to the point where you do a lot of furniture, I would highly recommend investing in things that are going to make your job easier. So I finally did that today, and I'm really excited to get this hydraulic lift out and see how it goes. I'm gonna just call it a buffet. I don't know, that's just what I would call it, because that's kind of what I call this one over here. So this buffet cabinet is extremely heavy. It is solid wood. It's, like I said, it's well made, so I already have a hard time just moving it around. I think lifting it will help, number one, get the legs on the bottom, and number two, I won't be crouched down trying to paint. So we're gonna get all that set up today. So let's go and get started. All right, so I'm gonna first get this motorcycle lift out of the truck. So I went with this motorcycle lift because it pretty much does the same job as the table lift, except that it's way cheaper. So this one was $100, and the table lifts got all the way up to $300. So it was pretty wild, the price difference. And what's pretty interesting is this one lifts up to 1,500 pounds, and the table lifts were only lifting up to, I think it was 500 pounds for the more expensive table lift, and I think it was 300 pounds for the cheaper one, but the cheaper one was still $200. So either way, this was a way more affordable lift to purchase, and like I said, it did the job. So after spending a good hour trying to put it together, because it did not come with instructions, I then positioned the piece of furniture over top of the two little legs. I just used my dolly to help me kind of lift it because this is a very heavy piece. And once I got it on the two little leg lifts here, you just press the pedal and it lifts it right up off the ground. That way you can sit on a stool, or you can even stand and work on it, and that way it's not one of those pieces where you're like crouched down the whole time. I've obviously learned as I've gotten older that my body is just not made for that anymore. So I'm trying to protect my back and my legs, my knees and all that, and work smarter, not harder. All right, before we get started, here's an overview of the buffet cabinet that I'll be working on. So honestly, it's not in horrible shape. I wish I could have left it, the original wood color, maybe even like toned down some of the yellow orangey tones. However, I think that the piece is going to look stunning painted, so I can't wait to get into that. But first, we have a lot of touch-ups to do and a lot of cleaning to do. Right there on the bottom left-hand corner, the little corner piece got broken off. However, I did save those pieces so I could wood glue them back on. But in the meantime, I went ahead and opened up my little seat here as well. I went ahead and purchased this as well because at Harbor Freight, they were really inexpensive, and I knew, once again, this was going to make my job a lot easier, having a stool to sit on and kind of roll around as I worked on the project. So this was really easy to put together, but funny thing about this is there was no instructions either. So I literally just had to figure it out. But check it out. Now that I have the stool, it lifts up and goes down, and this is going to make all my projects so much nicer. I'm so excited about this. It's the little things that just make me so happy. But I'm going to start off by cleaning the buffet cabinet really well. I just took some really strong degreaser. It's really not strong degreaser. I don't know why I'm trying to be all
It's Dawn and water. But it works really well. So Dawn and water is like my go-to for cleaning any type of furniture piece. I don't know why I said strong degreaser, like I'm over here using some strong chemical products. It's Dawn and water inside this little spray bottle. It has always worked really well for me, and it doesn't leave a residue behind. It works great. All right, so after getting the buffet cabinet all wiped very clean, I moved on to gluing on this little corner piece here. Now, you wouldn't think this would be too difficult. I mean, how hard could it be? Just puzzle it back together. Well, it took me a minute to figure this out, and what's really wild is I'm actually pretty good with puzzles, but after further investigation, I realized that I was still missing a piece, that's why it wasn't lining up, and I found the other piece inside of the buffet cabinet, so that's why I was struggling. But once I got them all in order, I just taped them on so that way they would hold until the glue dried. Alright, so now we're going to work on all the imperfections before we get into paint. So I just wood glued this little bottom piece back on because it was starting to kind of peel up a little bit. It's like a little laminated strip. So I wood glued that back and then just taped it shut so that way it would, dry well. Then this one little handle here, I needed to bend back straight. At some point it just got bent. So I worked on that, and then I'm also going to start wood filling anything that needs to be filled. So at the bottom there were a couple pieces that were missing from this like bottom laminated strip. So I just took some of this wood. I don't even think this was wood filler. I think this was spackling because I knew I was painting all this, so I didn't use wood filler. That's what it was. So I just took the spackle and just filled these areas and tried to get it as smooth as I possibly could with my finger, but then later on went in and sanded it all smooth so that way when I painted it, you wouldn't even know that I wood filled it, or not wood filled it, spackled it. Now, I am taping off the handles, and the only reason why I did this was because after I went to go remove them, I realized that they were not only installed with a screw, but they were also nailed in, which is really interesting, and you don't see that very often, so I knew that if I was to try and get the nail out, I was going to end up breaking either the handle itself or damaging the cabinet, so I decided to just tape around them and just paint around them. And then if I needed to do any touch-ups, I could with like a really tiny small paintbrush, and that's what I ended up doing later on. So yeah, you just kind of got to work with whatever project you're working on. You just got to roll with the punches. You just never know what you're going to get into until you get started. But now we're going to jump into working on the top. So I measured it out, and the board I originally purchased from Lowe's was not wide enough. I don't know why I didn't get the wider board. I messed up. So thankfully, my husband purchased these two. These are 2x8s. He bought these to help load in our foiler into the back of the truck. But that's a little too sketchy. We need some actual lifts. We just end up picking it up ourselves. But anyway, so we had this wood on hand, so I went ahead and used it, and these worked out great. The biggest issue with using these two boards is I had to fill the seam in the center, and I will later on share the whole struggle with filling a large seam when you put two pieces of wood together. But, here on my channel, I keep it real. Every project I work on is not going to be 100% perfect. Sometimes they have more character than others, and this one, it tends to have a lot of charm and character to it, but I think it all turned out really pretty. So I just, like I said, measured out where I needed to cut both of the boards the same size, and I'm going to go ahead and not only glue them, I use like Gorilla Glue to glue them on to the top, but I also used screws to attach them as well because this cabinet is already really heavy, and I wanted to make sure that whoever ends up getting this cabinet, if they decided to lift it from the top, because sometimes when you're picking up furniture, you tend to grab it from the top piece. I didn't want the whole top to just pop off, so I made sure to really attach it well. Since the cabinet is pretty heavy, I wanted to make sure that it was going to be durable for movement. Now, this Gorilla Glue I'm using is actually the same tube of glue that I had left over from the trim work that I did in my dining room. If you missed that project, I'll link that video below. It turned out really beautiful. This glue is like super strong and it dries so fast, but it's really, really hard to get out of the tube. You know what's funny is any type of glue I've ever used, whether it's liquid nails or this, I've always had a hard time getting it out, like squeezing it. My hands just aren't that strong. So just know that that's definitely a possibility. If you're working on a project yourself, you might struggle a little bit. And at the end of the day, it could just be a tool issue. It might just be my caulking gun, who knows, but anyway, I got that done, and then once I get the one in place, the second one was easy because then you just got to line it up with the the first board, and I let them sit for a little bit, kind of dry just a hair, and then I start screwing them in. I wanted to make sure they were dry a little bit before I started to screw them in with the screws, just so that way they were already held in place and they weren't like sliding all around. So you will notice I have two drills here, one with a drill bit on it, and I'm just kind of drilling out the hole first before I put the screw in. And I'm doing this for multiple reasons. The number one reason is because my drill has been struggling and I'm having a hard time sinking screws into the wood, and I definitely wanted to sink the screws so that way I could wood fill over them, so that way you wouldn't see the screw showing with the final product. But I was definitely struggling. Not only is it really hard to sink a screw alone if you don't have like a hammer drill, but my hammer drill it's not hammering. It's not working that great. So I pre-drilled the holes before I put the screw in, and that way I could sink them, and this also prevents it from stripping the wood as well. Alright, so now we're going to move on to the wood filler. Now, I had some plastic wood that was stainable. However, if you've ever used wood filler in general, you know that it does not stain the same as regular wood. You can tell the difference. So I read online that you can add sawdust to your wood filler and it will allow the wood filler to stain the same as the piece of wood that you're staining. So you just kind of mix it together, and then if it gets a little too thick, you just add like a little bit of water, and that's what I used to wood fill all the holes along with the center seam. Now, this is not going to be perfect. I don't care who you are, unless you have like the most fancy sanders and tools and all the things. I have never ever been able to use wood filler and get it to the point where it's sanded and it is such a smooth finish that it looks like perfection. I've never been able to accomplish that, and I've done plenty of projects, you guys, but yeah, it's definitely not easy, and I am not here to make it seem like everything is. My job here for my channel is not only to show you budget-friendly projects, but to also show you the imperfections and let you know that it's normal to not have a perfect final look at the end. Like, it's not always going to be 100%. So, and that's okay. Sometimes it just adds a little bit more character. It just makes the piece a little bit more unique. And I honestly don't mind it. I know some people would be like, absolutely not. But what can you do when you're flipping furniture? You're definitely going to hit these little moments. But anyway, so I went ahead and moved on to adding the trim. Now, y'all could probably already tell I didn't plan on leaving the raw wood showing on the front. So I purchased this, I don't know what this would be called, braided I think this would be considered braided trim. I really love the way it looked, and I liked how it looked with the sides of the buffet cabinet because it had, those vertical lines. I really liked how that looked, so I thought this trim would complement that really well. So I went ahead and purchased this trim, and I cut the angles. It was a 45-degree angle, nothing crazy, so that way I could have a perfect seamless lineup on the front. And then on the back, I just cut it straight, so it just kind of cuts off in the back there. No one's really going to see the back of the cabinet because it's going to go up against the wall most likely. So I wasn't too worried about that. I mean, if you wanted to, you could purchase extra trim and go all the way around, which would probably be a little bit more professional, but we're not professional over here. We're just doing bougie on a budget. So I went ahead and nailed the trim in using my nail gun. And this is actually the moment where my nail gun finally gave out on me. So this was the last project with my nail gun, which is really sad because I use this nail gun and I recommend it so much. I think I've just used the heck out of it. I really have. It's been so good to me, but it has jammed a few times due to user error just because I had to learn how to use it. And unfortunately, I think I've damaged it at this point, but she served me well. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to sanding. I did round off the corners so that way they weren't a hazard. And then, of course, rounding off the corners just gives a little bit more of a seamless look as well. So then once I got that part done, I went ahead and started sanding down the top. Now, the top needed a ton of sanding because obviously, as you can see from just this video clip here, there's a ton of wood filler I used, and I did over add the wood filler so that way when I did start to sand it down, it would leave a smooth finish. However, this is the part where I was talking about where nothing's ever going to look perfect, and no matter how many times I've tried different methods and I've tried all these new techniques that I've learned from watching other creators and doing research, I can never get my wood filler to be 100% smooth. I just can't. You can always see it no matter what I do. So if y'all have any tips, let me know in the comments. I always love to learn new tricks and stuff, so if y'all have any ideas, let me know. In this case, I had to use wood filler for the top because I was going to stain it. I probably would have used the Bondo, which I've noticed a lot of creators use, like a Bondo type of filler instead because it does smooth very well, but you can't stain that. So I don't really know what else to do to get the finish that I was going for. But anyway, then I got really particular here in the corners and I was sanding down this little area that I wood filled. And then I'm going to move on to taping everything off and getting prepared to paint, which really starts to transform this piece. Wait till you see it painted. It turned out gorgeous.
So I have everything taped off. I'm going to take this clear DAP all-purpose acrylic caulk and I'm going to just gently rub my finger over all the edges where I put the tape, just so that way when I peel it up, it is a smooth, clean line. You can do this with white caulk as well, but I'm going to use clear because I'm not painting this white. I'm painting it a different color. Hopefully this isn't dried out. Alright y'all, so I got my piece of furniture all ready to go. Everything is taped off. We're going to go ahead and get started with painting. And like I said earlier in the video, this is sponsored by Beyond Paint. So thank you to Beyond Paint for sponsoring this video. I have worked with them multiple times here on my channel and I stand behind their paint. It works so well. It looks so professional. Highly, highly recommend.
Beyond Paint is an all-in-one that provides ease of application with no stripping, no sanding, no priming required. This paint is formulated to bond to nearly any surface except for walls, so furniture, cabinets, countertops, vanities, even glazed tile. This paint will be perfect for your upcoming project. Since this paint is an all-in-one, it saves valuable time, effort, and money. The paint color I'm using today is called Pebble. It is my favorite color that Beyond Paint has. I've used this color multiple times in my bathroom, and every time I've used it, I've always gotten a ton of compliments on the color, and everyone always asks what color it is. It is Pebble by Beyond Paint. It is so good. Now, don't be alarmed. This paint is slightly textured, so don't let that scare you. It is formulated that way, so that way it eliminates brush marks, providing a rich finish that conceals imperfections. So it just makes your entire project come together so nicely and look so professional. Beyond Paint does recommend using a 3/8 snap roller, and while using this paint, I learned that around the corners you actually want to stipple it in with a paintbrush instead of using the typical brush stroke motion. This just makes sure that you don't have those brush marks left behind, and then of course whenever you're done with all your stippling into all the corners, you're going to roll over with the roller and get in any areas you can. And that's what gives you that professional finish. Now, this paint is extremely durable. I use this paint in my bathroom, on my vanity, and on the bathroom cabinets behind my bathroom door. And they are holding up wonderful. And I'm not just saying that because this video is sponsored. I actually really think that this is a durable, good cabinet paint especially. Now, you have to keep in mind that while the paint does dry in 2 to 4 hours, it does take 7 days to fully bond, and it takes up to 30 days to completely cure. So you don't want to do like a crazy scratch test or anything like that until your product has time to really settle. And trust me, waiting that 30 days seems like a long time, but that is where you're going to get your most durable finish, and you can really just see how well this product works. And here's a couple before and afters of my bathroom. Now, my bathroom vanity has been painted for I think it's been over a year now, and it still looks the same as it looked right here in this video clip. No chips, no scratches. It's held up so good, especially with it being in a bathroom where I'm constantly scrubbing and cleaning. And not only that, but just having like all the moisture that comes with being in a bathroom. The paint job, it looks great, and I've had zero issues with it. And I also feel like this color is just absolutely perfect for any space. It's just a great neutral that goes with any style. Now, as you can see here, I'm going in with my second coat, and you can see just how great the coverage is. And because this paint is formulated with the newest nanotechnology, it contains a very fine colorant, so it avoids fading due to UV sunlight and provides 3 to 4 times more coverage and durability than regular paint. Beyond Paint is offering a 10% discount on all paints on their website at beyondpaint.com for a limited time. Simply enter the discount code CARRY at checkout. That's Carrie for 10% off your online purchase of Beyond Paint all-in-one paint. And thank you guys so much for trusting my recommendation as always. And keep in mind that if this paint color does not work for you, not to worry, there's lots of other paint colors to choose from. And on the Beyond Paint website, you get to see product reviews from other customers who have loved Beyond Paint just as much as I have. And you can also get lots of inspiration from seeing everybody's transformations on there. So definitely check it out. Like I said, it's beyondpaint.com, or just use the links down below in my description box. And thank you so much, Beyond Paint, for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into the project. Once I got the full cabinet fully painted and let it dry for a couple hours, I moved on to sanding the top again. Now, this time I was sanding for a while. I was probably sanding for a good hour, and I still, even after sanding, I added more wood filler, sanded that back down. In the end, like I mentioned earlier, I could never get rid of all of it, and it was still noticeable. So at that point, I was just like, okay, we're gonna roll with it because clearly nothing I'm doing is working. So I jumped into staining. The stain color I am using is actually a pre-made color, it is a custom color that I made using stains that I had on hand because I didn't have the specific color I was looking for. And instead of buying stain, I just mixed a couple that I had to create the same color that the cabinet already was originally, because I chose to keep the inside of the cabinet wood. So I wanted to, match that wood color. So that way, if you ever open the cabinets, I wanted it to all look cohesive, and I felt like it just looked so good doing it this way. So like I said, I just mixed some stain colors together, tested them a few times, and just kind of created my own color. And in the end, it does match literally almost perfect. Is it the exact same color? No, but it's close enough, and that's what I was going for. Now, when it comes to staining, I was just using a paintbrush here, but you could use a towel. But because there was a lot of grooves in this trim board that I added to the front, I needed to use a paintbrush to kind of get into those. But I did get a few drips on the cabinet itself, and I was able to wipe it clean without rubbing off any of the paint, which was so nice. So honestly, if I was recommending you to do this project, I would say to tape off the cabinet before you apply the stain, but I like to live life on the edge over here. And after working so hard on all that painting, I decided to not tape anything off. I don't know why I do the things that I do, I just do them. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just going to work on staining this, letting it set in, and I think I did a total of 3 coats of stain, because the stain that I'm using is really thin because I had mixed it a couple, times, so it was soaking into the wood, and it just took a few coats to get the color I was going for. Alright, so once I got the top stained, this was like just the first coat of the stain at this point, so you'll see the stain color kind of look patchy. Don't let that, scare you. It's going to look good in the end, trust me. I had to do a few coats because, like I said, it was a custom color. But I'm lowering down the furniture piece, and I'm going to flip it on its back side so I can work on adding the legs. Because this was because this was a hutch, obviously it wasn't tall enough without the top of the hutch. It just looked awkward sitting low to the ground. So I wanted to add some legs. So I grabbed some legs from Lowe's, and I also grabbed some brackets from Lowe's as well. And I'm going to attach those to the bottom of the cabinet. Now, when I flipped it over, I realized that there was only a spot to put 2 brackets on the front of the cabinet, but see on the back side, you couldn't really add legs or the bracket to it, so I had to improvise, and I had to add some 2x4s, so that way I had somewhere to actually screw the bracket into, that way I could put the legs on. So I just had to roll with the punches here. So yeah, I got the first one on, and I'm just going to share that one with you guys. It took me a while to get the other ones on, so I didn't film that entire process. I didn't want to bore you guys, but it was just a matter of getting the 2x4s in place and getting the other legs on. So that's how it ended up turning out on the bottom. No one's going to see the bottom except for me, or unless they flip the furniture upside down, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Hopefully no one minds when they flip it over, but I actually think this piece is going to my sister-in-law, so she don't care. But yeah, it worked, and the legs are on there fine, and they're nice and sturdy, and that's all that mattered to me, was that it was strong and it wasn't going to wobble or anything like that. Once I got the cabinet back upright, there were a few touch-ups I needed to make, so I went ahead and painted those, and then we're going to work on peeling off all the tape. Now, because I used the caulk around the seams of the tape, it allowed to have such a nice, clean line. Since I did choose to leave the inside of the cabinet original wood, I wanted this transition to be as smooth as possible, so it didn't look like I just painted the outside and just chose not to paint the inside. I wanted it to look intentional. So I peeled all this up, and then I'm going to work on sealing the top. Now, to seal the top, I used polyacrylic in a it was a clear satin finish, and I did 2 coats of this just using a cheap sponge from Walmart. And once you add the clear coat, it really just brings that stain color out just a lot more. It just makes it pop. So now I had to do some touch-ups on the hardware. I had to actually paint all the hardware with a tiny paintbrush because I couldn't get the hardware off originally. And the color I use for the hardware is called Gold Leaf. It is a Rub and Buff product that I'm using. This is actually the same tube I used on my TV when I painted the trim around my TV to make it look like a frame TV. It turned out so good. If you want to check that out, I'll link the video below.
Alright, so I finally finished. It's giving very French farmhouse. I love it. It's so pretty. I love the color, the gold little hardware, just nice little detail. I love this right here, the little braiding along the edge. The wood legs just kind of give it some more character. I think it looks great. Y'all have to let me know what you think, but we'll jump into some before and afters. Okay, so in case you've been curious on what the inside looks like, I decided to leave the entire inside wood, but I did make sure to tape everything off and use a line of caulk along the tape to make sure I got a seamless line. That way when it's open, it looks real nice, but when it's closed, you can't see that it's wood on the inside. So it's really, really pretty. These drawers are stunning. They are dovetail. They open so easily. I got a little bit of sawdust in here, so I need to clean that up, but absolutely beautiful. And this whole cabinet is just in great condition. I mean, it's beautiful. I'm in love. I do want to get up close and personal on the top because the top is a lot more like rustic farmhouse, not perfect at all. Definitely had some major issues with the wood filler, and I always do, and I feel like nobody ever talks about this, but I have such a hard time getting my wood filler to smooth out no matter what I do to it. I've watched so many tutorials on it, and I'm starting to think that people just don't show up close like what it actually looks like, because I can't tell you how many Instagram reels I watched with people wood filling, and theirs always looked perfect, and mine's like, what the heck is this? But what I did was I used wood filler, and I added sawdust to it because I did research on it, and it said that adding sawdust will allow your wood filler to stain better, and it did. That worked great. However, adding the sawdust created more of a lumpy texture, so it was so difficult to smooth out. The more I sanded, the deeper it got, and then you could start to see the fact that I obviously put two boards together again. It ended up not being 100% perfect. I think it just adds a little bit more of that rustic farmhouse character, but some people would not like this. Some people would like a more smooth finish. I just want you to know that that's not always going to happen. Things like this do happen, like little ridges, bumps, especially when you're using like knotted wood. But I think overall it turned out so beautiful. I sealed it really well using the polyacrylic on the top. I did use a satin finish just so it had a little bit of a sheen. Or wait, did I use a satin? Yeah, clear satin is what I used. So you can see it has a little bit of a shine, so that way if you like set a cup on here or something, it's not gonna mess it up. But I really, really love how it turned out. So that is the finished product. I think it turned out so beautiful, very French farmhouse, and I'm so happy with my decision to leave the inside original wood. It just brings so much more character to the piece, and now that the top and the legs match, it just looks like it was just meant to be. I am really happy with how it turned out. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, don't forget to check out Beyond Paint and make sure you use that discount code. I'll have all the information at the top of my description box for you guys. And I think that this piece is actually going to go to my sister-in-law. She wants to try it out in her dining room, so we're going to see how that turns out, and I will definitely keep you updated on if it works for her space and if I sell it or, whatever I decide to do. So anyway, thanks so much for watching and being here. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, y'all.